Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we are very pleased you've joined us for our two-day OTCQB Virtual Investor Conference. The next presentation is from Tocvan Ventures. Please note you may submit questions for the presenter at any time. You can also view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting. At this point, I am very pleased to welcome Chris Gordon, Chief Executive Officer of Tocvan Ventures, which trades on the OTCQB Venture Market under the symbol TCVNF and on CSE under the symbol TOC. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today. Thanks, everyone, for joining us to get caught up on the Tocvan story. For some of you, this may be a new story, and for some of you, hopefully, maybe you've been following along with the progress. Just to start off, obviously, management is pretty key when looking at investing in junior mining stories. Jurisdiction, projects, obviously, those things are important as well. So I'll start off with a little bit of my background. I started in the mining sector going back to 2008. I was fortunate enough for the last 12 years up until last July, so about a year ago, worked with Integra Gold and then Integra Resources. So Integra Gold was a project we had in Val d'Or that we sold to Eldorado in 2017 for about 600 million Canadian. And Integra Resources became a junior producer back in November of 2024 and is on path to become an intermediate producer in the next 2 to 3 years. For me, I certainly enjoy the earlier stage of building something. And when I started talking to Brody Sutherland, executive chair of the company, who I've known for close to 10 years, and he gave me an update about a year ago, I was pretty excited about the opportunity. It actually reminded me of a similar opportunity that we had with Integra Gold, being an early stage company that ultimately, as I mentioned, got bought out. So I was really excited to join the team and recently became the CEO of the company. And Brody moved up to executive chair. So for us, you know, we've got some really exciting things, and I'll just speak to some highlights before we jump in and have a look at some of the slides in the deck. Ultimately, what attracted me to the story is that I feel with some more success over the next couple of years here, this is quite likely going to be an M&A target. The project is down in Sonora. Heap leach projects down there are very inexpensive to run and typically quite profitable. Yeah, so when you look at some of the re-rate catalysts that are up and coming over the next, call it 4 to 9 or 10 months, we have a pilot mine that's fully permitted that'll be running towards the end of the year. We'll be running 50,000 tons through the operation and expect to recover in and around 1,000 ounces of gold. So that pilot mine is one of the things that really differentiates us between other junior miners that are just focused on drilling out a resource and sort of arm waving around a resource. So for us, that pilot mine builds further inroads into the community, de-risks the project significantly, brings in capital for us, and also, you know, gives us an opportunity when we come out with our PEA study in Q2 next year to have a very strong PEA that's built off of actual production, meaningful production, not just a small bulk sample and metallurgy only. And we're also going to be coming out with a maiden resource towards the end of this year. And that's going to be, for us, obviously a big milestone as well. And then off the back of the pilot production and that maiden resource, as I mentioned, we will be coming out with our economic study that we think is going to showcase some really robust economics in the project. In the meantime, we're about 10,000 meters into a 20,000 meter drill program where we stepped outside the main zone at Gran Pilar, as you'll see coming up in the presentation, for the first time in the history of the project. Applying for a full-scale production permit, likely submitting that in Q1 of next year to get ourselves in the queue for a permit. And being able to run a pilot mine, we think annually, is going to allow us to be self-funding to a certain degree, depending on how many tons we're able to run through there. So I think there's a lot of exciting catalysts coming up, and we should have some drill results coming up potentially this week as well to watch for. So with that, I'll jump in and give you a run through on the project, and we can take a look at the project. So Sonora is where we're located, top mining jurisdiction in Mexico. You know, Mexico is considered to be a tier 2 jurisdiction, but one of the things I like about it versus Canada and the US to an extent is the permitting timeline. We think we're going to be in line for a permit for around 2.5 to 3.5 years to get one. I know there's parts of Canada up in the Yukon where you can be 12 to 15 years. So with that tier 2 jurisdiction, there are benefits. There's obviously pros and cons to everything, but we really love the jurisdiction. This map doesn't really show it, but you've got all of the big boys that operate there and in the neighboring Chihuahua state as well. On down the line to intermediate-sized producers, to junior producers, and then explorers like ourselves. It's a very favorable environment, especially for these open pit heap leach style projects. You can see some of the cash costs listed on the page there for Alamos's Mulatos mine, which is about an hour and a half from where we are. That's probably more the exception than the rule. I think when you look at Heliostar, you're kind of looking at more of kind of in that sort of average range there from 14 to 16, 1700 for all-in sustaining costs. So for us, we fly into Hermosillo, which is in the central portion there. It's a population that's closing in on 1 million people. Agnico, Alamos, Fresnillo, Grupo, all the big boys, and on down the line to juniors like us have offices there. So easy access to fly in there. We have 2 projects. We have Picacho up on the Caborca Trend, and it's right next to the San Francisco mine that Gold Group acquired last year. We'll be focusing on the Gran Pilar project down in the south central portion with the blue circle around it. That's where most of the work has been done. We will be looking to do some drilling up there to meet our obligations on spend there. I think there's 2 ways that could potentially play out if this gold market, don't want to jinx today's a little bit of a rally here, 1,000 or higher gold again. Investors are asking us how much we need to be able to expand into drilling there. We can look at that. If gold was to trade sideways over the next 2, 3, 4 years and M&A was to occur on this project, that could then potentially be a spin out and be a Tocvan 2.0. So for us to get to Gran Pilar, it's a 2-hour drive on highway. There's a little mining community that's just outside the project called Suwaki Grande. It's about 900 people. We've just signed an agreement with that community a couple of months ago. So it gives us water access to the project, which is important to look at if you are looking at projects in Mexico. We have a great relationship with that community as well. So 2-hour drive and then another 15 minutes in and you're at the site. We go right past the La Colorada mine. So easy access for us there. What we've looked at internally, we think to be able to build, what we think is our base case with continued success ongoing, would be a 50,000 ounce a year producer, would be sort of the smallest this could be. And we think that would cost around $35 million US to build something like that. And if you used somewhere around a $1,500 AISC and an input price of about $3,400, well, you can do the math on that. I think you're looking at a pretty robust project with those types of numbers. In terms of the highlights between the 2 packages, between Picacho and Gran Pilar, you're looking at 45 square kilometers. It's almost an even split with 22 square kilometers down at Gran Pilar. RC drilling's around US 130 a meter all in, add about 45 to that for core drilling. Easy access, year-round access for us. We're fully permitted for over 100,000 meters of drilling between the 2 projects. I'll introduce you in a moment to the local team of experts that we have that are helping to drive this forward down in Sonora. In terms of what we're kind of looking for here is near-surface oxide gold and silver deposits. Right now on the main zone, we've got over 30,000 meters of drilling. And we are, as I mentioned, about 10,000 meters into a 20,000 meter drill program that's outside of that main zone. And again, looking for open pit targets. There was a bulk sample done for 1,500 tons back in 2023, and now we're permitted for a 50,000 ton pilot mine coming up here that will be running towards the end of the year, and quite a bit of drilling that's underway as well. In terms of the team, I mentioned already my background, started in 2008, the last 12 years with Integra Gold and then Integra Resources. Brody Sutherland, he's the driving force that really brought this project in. He spent 3 years negotiating with a local rancher to bring in initially what was the main zone, which is 1 square kilometer. And from there, essentially, expanded that to 22 square kilometers, built the team down there in Mexico, kept the share structure very tight during very challenging times. He's done an amazing job sort of leading the company. And when I talk about the local team of experts down there, the real engine, the driver down there on site is Rodrigo. He, spent close to 40 years now working with Rio Tinto, Kennecott, SRK, and was actually born at La Colorada, which is, there's a little community of about 25, 30 homes right by the Helio Star mine. So he was actually born 80 kilometers from the project. So we're very fortunate to have him. And all you have to look at when you look at also Luis Manuel, mining engineer with over 50 years experience down there. As a 25 million market cap company last year in the summer, we were able to obtain in 30 days a pilot mine permit where the infrastructure is good for 10 years and the first pass is permitted for 50,000 tons. And it's really important if you're operating in a different jurisdiction in a different country to have local talent, senior local talent that's down there that's able to help drive it forward. When you look at some of the additions this year to the team and the management and directors, Annalad Kruger, currently executive chair at Integra Resources, which is where I know her from, was CFO of McEwen Mining, also advised Silvercrest on their asset sale to Coeur about a year ago for $1.7 billion, and her resume goes on and on. Saw a great opportunity here when Brody and I introduced the story to her. Darren Wagner came on as a special advisor earlier this year as well. Wealth of experience. He was a CEO at West Timmins Mining, sold that for around $500 million, going back about 10, 12 years ago, sold Balmoral Resources and advised Mag Silver as well. So we've been able to attract some top-notch people to round out our management and advisory team, and we're very excited about that opportunity. Jumping into the project, we're going to be, I'll be handling the questions just so you know at the end of the presentation, excuse me, so we can get through all the information in a timely fashion. And then of course, there's always the ability for you to book one-on-one meetings through this, through the OTCQB, or also through our website where you can book a meeting on the homepage as well. So introducing you to Gran Pilar. So again, 22 square kilometers, a little bit of history on that. When you look at the main zone, which is right where this red star is here, that's about 1 square kilometer right around there. That was the initial land package. You know, we've got over 30,000 meters of drilling. We think we've got somewhere in the neighborhood of around 400,000 ounces there is what we're ballparking that at currently. We just announced another big piece of news for us this year was that was the only part of Gran Pilar that we had a joint venture on. We've recently structured a deal where we're going to be buying out Calibri Resources of their 49% interest in that, which will allow us to have the entire project now at 100%. So again, a substantial amount of drilling's been done there. The white star just north of that, that's where the pilot mine is currently being built. We anticipate that to be completed in September. And then from there, we know that, and I've seen this from being on site a couple times, throughout this area into the east and then down into this valley, there were placer miners that were using excavators and just digging down 10 to 20 feet from surface, finding gold in the soil horizon there, running that, they're dumping it in, putting it into a dump truck, running it through a sluice box, recovering 30%. So while Brody and Rodrigo were working on this, they knew that the rest of the area had other potential as well. So they ended up staking the rest of this ground. Before they had to move off from their placer mining, they were working down this mag low into this area here. So we've had some really good success here. One of the examples is, which is 1,600 meters from the main zone. It's about 1,200 meters long. It's about twice as long as the main zone. So the idea for us has been to work into this other zone here. This is a magnetic background, as you can see. So typically the gold and silver accumulates on the contact point of the mag high, which is the pink, and then the mag low, which is that dark blue color. So geophysics and geochemistry have always been a good tool for us to identify new targets. Excuse me. And this is the first time that we've actually stepped outside into this area where previously we only had a soil grid through here and also rock sampling. We've just completed a soil grid through the eastern portion and rock sampling as well, so those results will be out. But we've discovered 3 new zones already. It is kind of early days. What we're looking for here is to identify gold-bearing structures and then go back into them and do further drilling to look for ounces that we can add to the resource. So from that perspective, it is kind of early days, but we see a great opportunity outside of that south block. Up in the north, you've got this north alteration zone. And that looks like you're on top of an epithermal. We drilled 5 holes into that for the first time ever. All of this ground outside the main zone has never been drilled historically, but there's old underground workings throughout the entire thing. So this north alteration zone looks like it's on the top of an epithermal, whereas down here, what we think in terms of our internal resource all resides within about 125 meters to surface, starts very near surface, which tells us that we're lower into the epithermal system where the gold is much closer to surface. This is about 3.2 kilometers long, averages around 1.5 kilometers wide. The plan is to get back in and do some more drilling there later this year. Currently, the drilling has been focused here. We've got a couple rigs turning there right now. What excites me about the project is we only got the magnetics flown on the south block last year in November. We didn't fly the central and north until Q1 of this year. So this is the first time we've had any kind of a real look at the central corridor. Currently, we're running a soil grid and grabbing rock samples there to identify drill targets for next year. But as you can see, it lights up very similarly to the south block, and we're excited to get in and do some drilling there. You know, the reality when you're looking at these types of projects down in Sonora that are heap leach, that are fairly inexpensive to build and to run and usually fairly profitable, you know, is 750,000 ounces is a production story all day long down there. There's lots of examples of that. The Mulatos mine is doing about 130,000 ounces per year. We think if things went well, this has the potential to be much more than that. So you could be looking, you know, at an opportunity that could be something that appeals to a major. You could also be something that appeals to a junior producer that's looking to build, you know, an intermediate. There's lots of examples like that. Heliostar, their project's close by. They've stated on their website that they're looking to build an intermediate producer. La Colorada, that's 80 kilometers from us. Last year, I think did around 35,000 ounces from the waste rock, from what I understand, for them to build that up to their target of around 50 to 60,000 ounces per year. They're going to need to do some drilling on that, and I think there's a good opportunity for them there. But I think if you can show a base case of 50,000 ounces with 10 years or more of runway, it's going to be appealing to other groups down there. Luca Mining is a group that's trying to grow. Gold Group, you've got Torex bought Prime Mining last year. So we're really excited. This central corridor now really gives us a lot of enthusiasm as another target that's a very similar size to the south block to go after. Bit of a close-up here of the south block. As you can see on the map inset on the left there, this is just a zoomed-in version of that, where the white collars are to be drilled and then first results pending. So we're getting some good grade. We know that this is a broadly mineralized zone. The entire project, primarily other than the north, it's a broadly mineralized zone where you can see wide intercepts of 0.5 gram to 1 gram per ton. And then inside of that, typically you'll find high-grade pockets that can run 3 to 15 meters of 5 to 20 odd gram per ton. So that help to carry the grade. So in terms of the pilot mine, again, that's one of the things that really differentiates us between other junior miners out there, is we're looking to build a real company here. Again, that infrastructure is permitted for 10 years. So for us to run that annually, we need to amend the permit to be able to do that. And just to give you an example, last year in the summer, we got the whole permit in just 30 days. And then in 14 days, we had 67 trenches and 35 drill pads permitted. So for us, I think the big opportunity here is the pad that we're currently building is capable of running around 220,000 tons through it at a time. So the first pass is permitted for 50,000 tons. We expect to recover in and around 1,000 ounces. So the cost for us to build that this year, and we're getting close to halfway through that now, is about $2 million US. So it should be a net positive exercise to the tune of around $2 million US, depending on what the gold price is like towards the end of the year. Hopefully, maybe it's higher, but either way, it's a good start for us. And next year, when we amend that permit to run it again, we're going to look to increase the tonnage. I mean, to give you an example, even if you were able to just double that to 100,000 tons, you'd be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 ounces recovered, which would kind of gets us close into that sort of self-funding potential. That's one of the exciting aspects of the story. And again, it also builds further inroads into the local community. And from there, it also helps us to de-risk the project. Again, with a PEA anticipated in Q2 of next year, if we're able to build a PEA off of our maiden resource along with pilot production where we've actually run 50,000 tons through, we've been doing metallurgy right now that's seeing gold recoveries in and around that mid 70% range. So far things are looking really strong. But again, that pilot mine, it allows us to generate some income, de-risk the story, build further inroads into the local community, as we've already hired people in the community to help put a fence around that pilot area that you see. That's about a 6-hectare disturbance area. So for us, that's we think it's an important aspect of building a real story here. And that's, again, paired with an aggressive drill program that we have underway right now. So in terms of the capital structure, right now we have 78 million shares issued and outstanding. You can see the warrant profile there as well. So we do have the potential to bring in some more capital through warrant exercise over the next year as well. One of our larger shareholders is Sorby Bornholm, family office out of Utah. They're at about 7-8%. There's a large broker in Canada that owns about 9%. And then we've got some good exposure over in Germany and Switzerland as well. So we feel like we know where about 45 million of those shares are. We did a bought deal with Stifel earlier this year at $1. We announced on 6, upsized to 8 million in the morning. Ultimately had 18 million of interest and closed on 10 million, allowing us to get aggressive with the pilot mine and the drill program and some of the other things that we're doing this year as well. Really puts us in kind of a good spot moving forward. In terms of a bit of a summary for everyone, again, for things to look forward to before I open up the floor to some questions. Essentially, you know, we are in the middle, as I mentioned, of a drill program. We're about 10,000 meters in on a 20,000 meter drill program. We've only reported on around 4,000 meters of that drilling. So again, we expect potentially to have drill results this week to watch for from that south block. Continued updates in terms of the pilot mine build. We anticipate that to be done in early October, perhaps late September, allowing us to get that pilot mine up and running with that 50,000 tons of production coming up likely in late October or early November to start there. You're either looking at Q4 or Q1 of next year for a maiden resource estimate. And again, all that culminates in what will be a very large catalyst for us, and I think a re-rate catalyst with a PEA study that's going to be coming out in Q2 of next year, highlighting the economics that I referred to earlier, which we think are going to be quite robust as well. So watch for steady news flow in terms of drill results moving forward. Updates on the pilot mine. We'll also be submitting an application for a full-scale production permit, and that's going to be likely be in Q1 of next year. And we anticipate the timeline on that to be somewhere in and around 2.5 to 3.5 years to get a permit. Axo Copper was the most recent recipient of a permit down in Mexico there. So hopefully I've touched on everything, and this is a good introduction for everyone. What I'll do now is I'll look to address some questions here before we wrap up. And just as a reminder, again, feel free to use the software here to book one-on-one meeting with myself either today or tomorrow. Conversely, if the timing doesn't work well for you, if you visit tocvan.ca, you'll be able to go in and book a meeting right on the home page with myself. And we'd love to talk to you there. And you can also subscribe on our homepage to make sure you're current with our news flow. So I'll jump into some of the questions here. What are the biggest near-term milestones that could really re-rate the story from here? I think we just touched on that one a moment ago, so I'll pass on that one. Hopefully I addressed that question for you there. All right, so another question came in. Management has guided to an N43-101 maiden resource estimate at Gran Pilar sometime in 2026 with results still pending. And again, I think we just sort of touched on that one again. I think there's a potential for that to be that to be out in Q4, late in Q4 this year. But obviously, we all know this industry, if you put anything out much beyond the first week of December, it typically gets lost in the shuffle. So I would say that there is definitely a strong potential that could slide into January and into Q1 of next year. Another question. The July surface results highlight a new target about 3 kilometers east of the main zone, plus a newly discovered near surface zone, roughly 900 meters from the pilot facility. How quickly can these move into the drill pipeline? That's a great question. Again, the plan that we had was to test a number of targets with a first pass and look to identify gold-bearing and silver-bearing structures, and then to go back in based off of the best results from those initial tests into those different zones. I mean, when you look at that magnetics map, you can easily see that there's quite a few areas that can potentially host. What we're using as guidance is, again, the geophysics and the geochemistry. So a soil grid, rock samples, and then the magnetics that we flew. Also, as another aside to that, we engaged with Verify earlier this year. Those of you who haven't looked at that, VRIFY, pretty interesting technology. And they also have Dora, which is a sort of algorithm based where you feed all of your information, your geological data that you have and data that you can get from the local government down there. And it also comes out with targets. There's been a lot of companies that have overlooked certain areas that Dora has actually found targets for them. So we've just been building that up, and we'll be using Dora as an additional source for that as well. So a couple more minutes here. How much of the current drill program is targeting growth beyond the main zone versus upgrading confidence in the existing resource potential? All of the drilling currently is essentially targeted at stepping outside of the main zone, where we have 30,000 meters of drilling. But that being said, there certainly are a number of targets that we'd like to hit inside that main zone. And as the dust settles on the agreement with Colibri, at some point this year, you will see us going back in to drill that main zone, which was the initial package for the whole project. Another question that came in, what is the strategic importance of moving 100% ownership of the original Pilar concessions? Clearly for us, that was a huge win. That's one of our big news milestones in the last 12 months. Having that entirely, I think, makes us much more investable, knowing that we don't have to share anything or rely on another company to come up with capital to contribute to their portion. So, I mean, that's a great question. Again, a huge win for us to be able to have Gran Pilar in its entirety going forward, and allowing us to also be able to use material from that, the pilot mine, going forward as well. Question came in regarding the village of roughly 900 people with a 400-year mining history is now formally partnered with you for 6 years. What did it take to get that agreement signed, and what do they get out of it that keeps them supportive as you scale up? Really excellent question. We've always had a great relationship in that community. We've supported that community through, renting a house there, renting space to be able to store our core and things like that, and contributing to the community. We've employed people from the community, and they're helping us to build out that pilot mine infrastructure right now. And there, as I mentioned earlier, there was production that was happening on what is now Gran Pilar after the expansion from the main zone going back about 3-4 years ago. That's been shut down from the Minister of the Environment recently. So a lot of those people that did placer mining that live in that community are no longer able to do that there. Some of the folks that live there travel an hour or a couple hours to go work at other mines. So the prospect of having a project that's about 20 minutes away from where they live is a big win for them. So we've got lots of support there. That agreement, as you mentioned, is good for 5 years with a 1-year extension. It's probably one of the more inexpensive deals out there. I'll say that for sure. It's around $12,000 US per year. So excellent agreement there with that community. And when we get that pilot up and running, we'll be employing people from the local community there so that we're able to build that relationship further, give them a taste of how we operate. with a full-scale permit in hand down the road. I think there's a lot of support there, as those people will realize that those are going to be full-time opportunities and will extend to more people in that local community there. So it looks like we are just wrapping up right now on the time. So thank you all very much for your time today. Looking forward to catching up with anyone who's interested. Again, reaching out either through this platform for a one-on-one meeting, or also reaching out to us via our website, where you can book a meeting with management. Thanks again for all your interest and your time, and watch for drill results this week. Thank you.